Hello, my name is Dimitri Lascaris. Currently speaking to you from Kalamata, Greece, but I'm a Canadian who normally resides in Canada. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the Green Party, my understanding of its core values, and my experience within the Green Party. I'm a lawyer, a journalist, and an activist. Most of the time a lawyer, but I also do journalism and activism as secondary activities and as a passion. And I have been involved in the Canadian Green Party for quite some time. In fact, the Canadian Green Party is the first Green Party, the first political party, I should say, that I ever joined. I joined it back in 2007 because of my concern about the climate crisis. And then I actually ran for the Green Party in a riding in 2015 that is located in Ontario, Canada. And the following year, I was appointed to the shadow cabinet of the Green Party by the leader of the party. And my role was to be the justice critic, to criticize the Minister of Justice in the Trudeau government. I also became a member of the shadow cabinet and the executive of the Quebec Green Party, Quebec being the second largest province in Canada. And in 2020, I ran to be the leader of the Green Party of Canada after Elizabeth May resigned, who was the leader for some 13 years. And I finished second on the 8th and final ballot. Out of 8 candidates, I got 45.5% of the vote, so came quite close to winning. And more recently, I've distanced myself from the Green Party, and I'm going to get into the reasons for that in a moment. The history of the Green Party, as many of you will know, is that it was founded in Europe. The first Green Party was the Popular Movement for the Environment, founded in 1972 in the Swiss canton of Neuchâtel. The first national Green Party in Europe was People, founded in Britain in February 1973, which eventually turned into the Ecology Party and then the Green Party. And the first political party to use the name Greens on a national scale and gain national prominence was the German Green Party. And at the time, this is in 1980 or so, they were famous for their opposition to nuclear power, as well as anti-centralist policies and pacifist values. Today, there are Green parties around the world, including in pretty much every Western country. Generally, they subscribe to 6 core values, at least on paper. And those core values are ecological wisdom, social justice, nonviolence, respect for diversity, participatory democracy, and sustainability. The problem that has arisen, I say problem from my perspective, in the global green movement is one that is not unique to the Green Party. It's one that we've seen in other political contexts, and that is the problem of co-option. When a party comes into existence that espouses a platform and a set of values that are anathema to the political elites, invariably what the political elites try to do is to co-opt the party and to replace its leadership over time with people who, in fact, become defenders of the elite status quo rather than persons who are truly committed to a transformative agenda. And this has definitely happened to the Green Party. It started as a protest movement against the policies of the political establishment. The pacifist, democratic, and sustainability objectives of the Green movement ran counter to the prevailing political orthodoxy in the West in particular, which was an orthodoxy of militarism, elitism, inequality, and environmentally unsustainable economic practices. The attempt at co-option, in my opinion, has met with varying degrees of success depending upon which country you're talking about. The co-option has been most severe, from my perspective, in Germany. And Germany happens to have the most powerful and influential Green Party in the world because it is a major player in a coalition government in a major Western state. As we have seen in the case of Ukraine and Palestine, the German Green Party strongly, I would even say fanatically, favors war and aggression. And by enthusiastically supporting sanctions on Russia, the German Green Party has helped to deprive Germany's economy of pipeline gas from Russia, which in turn has dramatically increased Germany's reliance on LNG from the United States and also on coal, both of which are much more polluting than pipeline gas from Russia. Ultimately, we have to get off of fossil fuels completely, at least to the greatest possible degree, Of course, I recognize that as a Green, but it makes no sense whatsoever if you're committed to environmentalism to choose a set of foreign policies which are going to result in you resorting to more polluting forms of fossil fuel extraction and consumption. In my opinion, and I should also say that one other way in which the German Green Party has been co-opted is that it has become an enthusiastic supporter of censorship and the suppression of peaceful protests, particularly online censorship and the suppression of protests by pro-Palestinian solidarity activists who are simply trying to stop a genocide. Germany has gone so overboard in that regard, with the apparent acquiescence of the German Green Party, that just yesterday, the German government banned political activity in Germany by the former Greek finance minister Yanis Varoufakis. And why did they do that? Because he was participating in a Palestinian solidarity conference by Zoom and gave a speech criticizing Israel and defending the human rights of the Palestinian people. This type of policy is simply profoundly inconsistent with the participatory democracy and social justice values of the Green Party to effectively ban somebody like Yanis Varoufakis from political activity in the country. In any event, at the other end of the spectrum, in terms of cooperation, you have the U.S. Green Party. And I would argue that the U.S. Green Party is the party in the Green movement that has remained most faithful, at least of the major Green parties in the West, most faithful to the core values of the Green Party. Under Jill Stein, the U.S. Green Party, I should say, is staunchly anti-imperialist and anti-militarist. Jill opposes the wars of aggression that the United States and its proxies have waged and continue to wage. She calls for dramatic reductions in military spending, very forceful efforts to effect meaningful reductions in the nuclear arsenals of the world's nuclear powers. She also opposes censorship and favors economic policies that prioritize the needs of the most vulnerable. So in that respect, she's clearly honoring the values of participatory democracy and social justice. And her commitment to sustainability is simply beyond question. She's a fierce critic of the fossil fuels industry and has consistently criticized the United States government for promoting fossil fuels extraction and consumption rather than doing what it can to replace it with renewable energy. And finally, this brings me to the Canadian Green Party, the party to which I've committed, over 15 years of my political life. In terms of its commitment to the core values of the Green movement, Canada's Green Party, frankly, is somewhere between the German Green Party and the U.S. Green Party, although under its current leader, Elizabeth May, I would say, sadly, that the Canadian Green Party is closer to the German Greens. And in fact, Elizabeth May mentions with approval the German Green Party regularly. She clearly admires the party despite its sellout of the core values of the Green Party. And she almost never discusses Jill Stein or the U.S. Green Party. So just to give a few examples, on the NATO expansion, she's ambiguous. She won't come out and say whether or not NATO should expand, whether or not Canada should remain a member of NATO, even though a party truly committed to anti-militarism and nonviolence would, without hesitation, argue that the country should be withdrawn from NATO. With her policies with respect to Palestine are a mixed bag. On the one hand, she has claimed to be a supporter of sanctions on Israel, but on the other hand, she condemns the BDS movement, which is a peaceful movement to hold Israel accountable for its human rights violations. On social policy, she's modestly progressive. She favors a 1% wealth tax, but has never argued in any serious way for the types of tax increases that are necessary both to reduce inequality in Canada, which is worse and worse by the year, or to fund the social programs necessary to protect the most vulnerable members of society. So she's very, very restrained on progressive, transformative economic policies. And finally, she has supported censorship. During the pandemic, the Trudeau government enacted a draconian censorship law called the Emergencies Act. It was very controversial at the time. She came out in favor of it, although to his credit, the other Green MP, Mike Maurice, opposed the Trudeau government's resort to the Draconian Emergencies Act. At the end of the day, I think that we as Greens, if we are going to remain relevant, if we are going to be a political force to be reckoned with, we have to stay true to our core values. If we allow ourselves to be co-opted in the way that the German Green Party has, and to stray from our core values and to become, in fact, defenders of the status quo, ultimately, we will become extinct. This is what we've largely seen with social democratic parties in Europe that have been co-opted, like the UK Labour Party, the Socialist Party in Greece, and on and on. To remain relevant and to remain a force for good in this world, we have to defend tirelessly and with courage the core values of the Green movement. Thank you for listening to me today, and I wish you a successful conference.